Hey everyone, so I just got done with my flight from JFK to LaGuardia. That video is uploading right now, and I figured I'd make another quick video. Real quick disclaimer, this flight was never intended to be a video on YouTube, so it ain't great. But it was my longest flight. Actually, it's my longest flight ever. I've never even flown in Microsoft Flight Simulator as long as this one, which it wasn't supposed to be. It started out as kind of just like a regular flight, but I happened to have a full tank of fuel and decided to go for it. So as you can see here on 4/20/2022, I had a 23-hour and 58-minute flight. Now that included the whole time I was operating the plane. I was not flying for that long. I believe it was 22 hours, just over 22 or something. You'll see it later in the screenshots I have. But I did choose the A350-900. Real quick note, I am not an Airbus fan. I don't usually fly Airbus. So this was the first time I flew that specific plane, and the first of a dozen times that I've flown Airbus planes. It was between that and one of the Boeings. I can't recall right now which Boeing. It was the one that can go the furthest. I honestly, usually I can remember which one that is, but for some reason I can't recall that one. Anyway, I flew out of JFK, and we landed at YMLT. Now, YMLT was, honestly, it was kind of random. I did land where I wanted to land, but it was not, as you'll see later, it was a long flight. It was specifically meant to be the amount of time in the air, not the distance I traveled. When I say longest, it was how long I was up in the air. The distance I traveled was pretty far, but it wasn't even in a straight line. It wasn't even close. It started out as a random flight. I flew around a little bit and wasted a little bit of fuel, which sucked. And then I made a plan. The plan didn't really work, so I kind of changed the plan. So anyway, you'll see when you get into it, but let me push play and I'll show you the video. After the video, I'll show you a couple screenshots I have of some of the other stats that you can't see in the video or hear from that flight. Here we go. So, as you can see again, I started in an actual spot. It was a full flight. There was I didn't start on the tarmac. I didn't land and just quit right there. I mean, I actually taxied, took off, flew, landed, taxied, parked. Kinda. The runway that I used wasn't built for this plane. No, I flew until I had about a half-hour fuel left and picked the runway that was closest that would work. None of them that were closest would technically work by the book for this plane. So I did some math, and when I did the math, I found that, you know, the runway I picked based on the weight that my plane was would work.
Pushback approved. November 386 Charlie Papa.
So yeah, and the plane was empty. I had a few passengers, some cargo, so that it would be realistic, kind of, but it wasn't full by any means. It was full of fuel, but that was it. By the end of the flight, obviously the fuel was gone. So you'll see during the landing, we basically glided in. But let's watch the takeoff. Again, I taxied here. Close that out right now. So the takeoff was a little botched, and again, this video was not meant for YouTube. Just how it is. I didn't take off very well. I think I had the gust turned on at the time, and a big gust came along right as I was getting ready to take off as I rotated. But you'll see that I almost snapped my left wing completely off. Luckily, I didn't. There's rotation, and there's whatever the hell that was. I can't tell you. But we straightened it out. Again, I do think there was a bit of gusting because you can see I struggled to get it to straighten out at first. And a plane this big, that's not, you know, that's hard to do. But then we climbed a little bit. And there was my stall, which I don't know why it stalled out the way it did. It was actually on autopilot when it stalled. So I have a feeling that I had it on autopilot, and the autopilot button accidentally got pushed while it was in my pocket or I was carrying it around. And all of a sudden I heard the stall warning go off, and I grabbed my phone out. So I assume that's what happened. Maybe it was just one of the parameters was breached, because if the parameter's breached, then autopilot automatically disengages. So that is possible. But anyway, there was a serious stall, and I had to pull the phone out real quick and try to recover from the stall, which also wasted fuel. So anyway, then you'll see, we'll open the map up right here, and I'll zoom out, and you can see if I go back towards where the stall was, there's where I took off from JFK. You can see we moved down along the coast here, down by Florida. And we crossed over down here, down at what would be the southern part of, where'd we go? There we go. Down at what would be the southern part of, actually that's the northern part of South America, I believe. So we moved down. Now the plan was, and I did have somewhat of a plan. At first when I took off, I was just going to fly around a little bit, and I did, and I wasted a little bit of fuel doing that. My plan was to go down. My plan originally was to go straight down over here and come down, go across Antarctica, come back up and land in Australia. Now it didn't work out. I didn't have enough fuel. I set up the entire flight plan, looked at it. It wasn't going to work. So instead, what I ended up having to do was I had to come down the way I am right now. And I kind of came down. I still wanted to fly across Antarctica. That was my plan. But even that didn't work. So you'll see here, I was getting ready to fly across Antarctica. I'm coming head on, and then I realized right about here that it wasn't going to work. So I cut it short of Antarctica, sadly. Came flying over here, and we ended up coming over here. We still landed in Australia, about where I wanted to. I didn't have a specific airport picked out. I had picked out multiple airports, hoping that I'd be able to reach one of them, and none of the ones I picked out were reachable. So, and again, the point was to fly as long as possible, so I wasn't going to pick an airport that was early on, like one of these on the island here, and not get my flight time. You know, I ended up flying for a very long time, and I was happy about that. Another real quick side note is, I started this flight off after I woke up. I flew all day, phone in my pocket the whole day, right there with me, checking it every 5 minutes, making sure everything's good. And I should have started the flight before I went to sleep. That way, if something happened while I was sleeping, I was only 3 hours in, or 4 hours in, or 5 hours in. Instead, I flew all day. I'm already like 16 hours in or something, and had to go to sleep. And I was like, so I slept like shit, waking up every 15 minutes or 30 minutes and checking my phone, because I was afraid something would happen. So I should have, hindsight, I should have just started the flight, went to sleep, and then finished the flight while I was awake. But at least I was well rested for the landing, which, by the way, was perfect. This is the best landing I've ever had, probably. But you can see here that I continued on, and this is real time. I did, it ended up being in the dark. I landed in the dark. So I'll close the map out right here, let you guys see the landing in the dark. So here you go. And I did land manually. It was in the dark. I was sitting in the cockpit with the HUD on when I landed. I usually do that, but after I show them, usually I show them in like this view because it's a little easier to see. But smaller planes, I'll watch from the tail a lot of times to land, but bigger planes, usually I'll open the cockpit up with the HUD on. It's just so much easier to control them, and you can see stuff. Like if I use the Super Cub and I land from the cockpit, you can't see what you're doing. You know, once you touch down, all of a sudden you can't see anything on the runway and you have no idea where you're going. There's touchdown. And again, it was a very smooth landing. There's nose gears down. And I'll flip it around. You can hear the reverse thrusters kick on. And we stopped. Now, like I said, I did taxi and everything, and I'll show you that later. But I'm going to go back real quick and let you guys see the landing from daylight, since the replay allows me to do that. So we'll switch it to noon. Zoom out a bit, and there you can see the landing. And again, it was, I'm not trying to brag, I mean, I don't usually get really good landings, but it was an amazing landing for an amazing long flight. And it definitely made up for that horrible takeoff that I had. I don't know what was going on there. But I'll fast forward here. I did want you guys to see that I did actually stop. I stopped on the runway successfully. But I also taxied and then parked, which this airport was not made for this plane, so that's the parking spot that I created right there. But there you go. Yeah, it was a good flight. I did do it live. I'm not sure if you saw that, but you can see at the beginning, air traffic control was on. There, so you can see at the beginning, air traffic control was talking and stuff. There we go. Anyway, you saw it at the beginning. The point was, I just wanted you guys to see that air traffic control was on. It was live. So I was not able to reverse 20 seconds. Like if you're in the free flight mode, solo, you can just reverse it. I couldn't do that. I wish I could have. A few things I would have redone. But anyway, so there you have the flight. I am going to go to my screenshots real quick and show you guys some of the other stats. So here you have some of the stats I took from that day. I had 9,325 pounds of fuel left, which was 3%. I was very, very empty. And on this one, you can see I actually had a 3% load. Like I said, 90% of my load, 99% of my load was fuel. I didn't have many passengers or much cargo. And then here you can see my airplane location. The flight time itself was 22 hours and 37 minutes. And that's about that. It was a good flight. I was really proud of it, but it was not meant to be shown on YouTube. So I know it doesn't look good, but it worked. Everyone survived, the plane survived, and it landed in the middle of nowhere in Australia. But I'll catch you guys later. Hope you enjoyed.